All right, Mr. Chair, the meeting is ready.
Okay, got it. I'd like to call this meeting of the Canmore Planning Commission, December 15th, 2021, to order. My name is Jeff Roberts, and I'm the chair of this hearing. All questions and comments shall be directed through the chair. So board members present today, I'll work my way across here and allow you to introduce yourself, starting with Larry.
Oh, Larry, you're muted.
There we go. Larry Bowen, public board member.
Great, thanks, Larry. Over to you, Florian.
Florian Youngen, public board member.
Okay, and I'll just drop down on my screen here. Joanna.
Joanna McCallum, council rep.
Great, thank you. And moving across here, Doug.
Great, public board member.
Great, thank you, Doug. And next in line here is Lisa.
Lisa Jackson, public board member.
Great, thank you. I think that's all for the members of the commission that are here. Now move on to town administration and staff to introduce themselves, starting with Katie.
Hello, I'm Katie Bravo Stewart. I'm the Canmore Planning Commission Secretary and the Planning Administrative Assistant for the town of Canmore.
Okay, working through here. I can see Jolene's on here.
Hi there, I'm Jolene Noel, and I'm the meeting administrator for the CPC here.
Great, thank you. Lauren, you're next on my screen here.
Lauren Miller, Manager of Planning and Development with the Town of Canmore.
Great, thank you. Moving across, Nathan.
Nathan Gravel, Development Planner for the Town of Canmore.
Awesome, thank you. And Blair.
Blair, you're speaking.
Sorry, there I am. Sorry, everyone. Good morning, Blair Birch. I'm just, working with the Town of Canmore Engineering to support some of the development applications coming through the town right now.
Great, thank you, Blair. Katie, are there any additions, deletions, or changes to the agenda that was sent out?
There are none from administration.
Great, thank you. So I move the commission to adopt the agenda as presented. All those in favor, please raise your hands. It's in there. Great, thank you. That motion was carried unanimously. We have previous minutes that were sent out from our November 24th meeting. Any comments, additions, or deletions to those, having read through those? If none, I move the commission approve the minutes of the November 24th meeting as presented. All those in favor? Great, that looks unanimous to me. Okay, next we'll move on to the development permit application PL 20210332. So the process for this afternoon's hearing is administration will present the matter before the commission. Commission members will have an opportunity to ask questions of administration for clarification. If required, the commission at our discretion can ask the applicant to make a small presentation of their application, time limited to 5 minutes. Commission members, if they have any questions or comments from that presentation, they will ask those. If there's any members of the public that are here, at the commission's discretion, we will ask those members to speak regarding the application to a maximum of 3 minutes, and then followed by any questions or comments from members of the commission. I'd like to remind everybody that the Town of Canmore has a respectful workplace policy, and that all communication should be respectful and relevant to the topic of the application. So without further ado, I think Nathan, you're on the point for bringing this one forward.
Yes, sir. Give me 1 minute to share my screen here. Just give me a second longer here. Some technical difficulties with. I am just going to leave and come back. That fixed the problem last time, so just give me 10 seconds here.
Okay. Katie, as a backup, do you have the ability to pull the application up?
I have it if Nathan's technical difficulties aren't resolved.
Okay. Here we go.
Perfect. Everyone can see that?
I can, yes.
Okay, great. Good afternoon, members of the Canmore Planning Commission, as well as those watching online. As I mentioned, my name is Nathan Bell. I'm a development planner for the town of Canmore. I also mentioned my presentation today is in regards to development permit application PL 2021-0332, an application proposing commercial development at 1200 2nd Avenue, referred to as Ravens Peak. For those unfamiliar with the site, it's located in Teepee Town. It was previously used for residential use. There was a detached dwelling on the site. The dwelling's been removed from the site in preparation for future development. Adjacent to the site are a variety of uses and features. There's Hospital Place, Municipal Road, as well as the hospital lands to the northeast. The parking lot for the Rocky Mountain Professional Center is to the southwest, just off the edge of the screen here. There are residential buildings along 2nd Avenue, just north of the site. There's a mix of existing detached dwellings and some new 4-unit townhomes as well. There's also Bow Valley Trail to the south, and of course, some of the commercial development along Bow Valley Trail as well. The subject site is within and governed by the Teepee Town Area Redevelopment Plan, which was recently updated and approved in 2020 or 2020. The ARP envisioned the purpose of this street as to allow for a mix of low to medium density residential uses and small scale commercial development that meets both local and visitor needs and supports the continuation of commercial development fronting along Bow Valley Trail. The development complies with this and all of the requirements of the ARP. In terms of uses, there are 6 visitor accommodation units proposed and as well as 1 personal service business. Visitor accommodation is a discretionary use, while personal service business is a permitted use in the Teepee Town Comprehensive Residential District. In planning's opinion, the proposed uses meet the intent of the district as well as the location of the site. With regards to form, there are 2 buildings, both 3 stories with an elevated walkway connecting the 2. With regards to the ground floor layout and sort of site layout, the ground floor is composed of mostly visitor accommodation units with the personal service business near the corner of the site. The development interfaces well with the street with numerous street level entrances. The blue arrows represent the entrances to the visitor accommodation units. The orange arrow marks the entrance to the personal service business. Black arrows represent the vehicle entrance and exit, and the gray arrows represent the individual garages for vehicle parking. So does the application comply with the land use bylaw? No, this application requires 5 variances. These include to commercial site width, maximum commercial site width, maximum building height, maximum eave-line height, minimum building step back, and maximum site coverage. And I'll get into these in a little bit more detail shortly, but as always, I like to start out with where the application exceeds the bylaw. In this case, the application has committed to achieving between 1 to 10% better than the requirements of the National Energy Code of Canada, exceeding the architectural requirements of the land use bylaw. And although it's not technically exceeding the land use bylaw, as there's incentives for it, I did want to mention that the development or the applicant will be preserving 5 existing trees on site. The sustainability screening report score is 7.82, suggesting the proposed development will have a positive impact on the community. Notable offsets include the site density, distance from services, percentage of the site set aside for social interaction, as well as art installation. So jumping into the variances now in more detail, the first variance is to lot width for commercial development. The restriction is 31 meters and the existing lot width of the site is approximately 49 meters. The intent of this regulation is really to limit the intensity of commercial development to, in a quantifiable approach, apply the small scale objective. The 31 meter width limitation was developed by considering 2 standard size lots side by side. So these are typically 15.5 meters in width. Of course, you have 2, that gives you 31 meters in width. The site here has an elongated triangular shape, which obviously gives it more frontage in exchange for less depth. Planning is supportive of the variance as the area of the lot is much smaller. It's 32% less in area than 2 typical sized lots. So the intensity of the commercial development still fits that desire for small scale. The development responds well to its corner location and enhances the street, and it aligns with the ARP's vision for commercial development along 2nd Avenue. The next 3 variances, that being to maximum building and eave-line height and the minimum building step back above the eave-line, are sort of intertwined. So I'm going to cover these all in one slide. The building and eave-line heights are permitted to be up to 10 meters and 7.5 meters respectively. Building 1, if you look at the slide, requires both a building height and eave-line height variance. The proposed building height ranges from 8.99 meters to the peak of 10.8 meters, which the red line on the image there represents the max height, or 10 meters. So you can see where it sort of encroaches above and is also below. Building 2 is compliant with the 10-meter building height limitation, which you can see on the screen on the bottom image. However, it does require variance to the eave-line height, which also ranges, in this case, from 8.09 meters to 9.5 meters. Planning supports the variances for both buildings for the following reasons. The owner of the adjacent residential property is working with the applicant on phase 2 and therefore has raised no objections to these proposed variances. And of course, they would be the one most impacted by these variances, being adjacent to the site. The roof peaks are far away from the adjacent residential properties. It's more than a typical lot's width away. And so it's, it's not really, there's very little impact on any of those adjacent properties. And I'll just step back on the slide here to kind of show that. Here's the property. Here's sort of the first roof peak at 10.8 meters. And then of course over here at the corner. So you can see there's huge distance between any adjacent properties. So there's really no impact of the variances. The roof has a visually appealing design. It's representative of a continuous set of mountain peaks, and the ARP states contemporary styles of architecture should be supported in TP Town. So those are the reasons for supporting the height and eave-line variance. In terms of the step back, development is required to step back a minimum of 1 meter in the front and rear facade above the eave line. As you can see on the slide, The building obviously doesn't really step back because the eave line is essentially the roof line. The intent of the regulation is really to increase sunlight and views for pedestrians, albeit slightly, at 1 meter traveling along the street and lane. Planning supports the variance as the design of the proposed building does incorporate partial and some complete openings in the facade, mainly through the form of large open and covered amenity spaces. So these are viewed as achieving the same purpose as the regulation, but without interfering with the architectural look or expression of the building. The final variance is to site coverage. The development is permitted a maximum site coverage of 51%. The development proposes a site coverage of 52%. Planning supports the variance because if the developer had developed on those 2 standard lots that I spoke about before, rectangular shaped, 51% coverage would have allowed for up to potentially 625 square meters of commercial area. The proposed site coverage of 52 in this case gives 467 square meters of commercial area. So it's still small in scale, I guess is the point here. It meets the minimum landscaping requirements as well. So they're not giving up any of the green space to facilitate that. A notice of application was posted on the site for 10 days for residents expressed concerns with the proposed development, specifically its effect on the character of the neighborhood, the on-site vehicle parking with the development, building height impact on adjacent properties. So I already covered planning's rationale for supporting the height variance, so I'm not going to speak to the last point, but I'll certainly address the first 2 concerns. So there was some concerns expressed about the character of the neighborhood with this development. What we heard was the building was unattractive, it was too massive, too visible, and too modern for TP Town. The ARP, which I mentioned was recently updated, did establish goals with respect to neighborhood character, which you can see up on the screen. And these are to enhance opportunities for social interaction and perceived safety by allowing for buildings to be close to the street, maintain neighborhood character through requirements for architectural diversity for neighboring developments, and support for contemporary styles of architecture. In the opinion of planning, the development fits the ARP's key objectives in that the development's located close to the street, provides opportunity for social interaction with the plaza, and it provides a diverse form of architecture through its contemporary style. And I spoke to these residents, and they're, the attractiveness of the building is always something that's highly subjective, especially with modern design. The residents that I spoke to weren't able to express how the look of the building in terms of that style would really impact them or change the character of the neighborhood for the worse. From planning's perspective, we believe that the building is interesting and it aligns with the contemporary design objective of the ARP. Concerns were also expressed that there's not enough on-site parking and that there's a lack of overflow parking along 2nd Avenue and Hospital Place. The development's required to provide a minimum there's a minimum and maximum, as the commission is aware, for visitor accommodation. In this case, there's a minimum maximum of 7 vehicle parking stalls, 6 for the visitor accommodation units, and 1 for the personal service business. The development has provided 7 vehicle stalls, so they've met the minimum maximum requirements. Now, should the need arise, there is overflow parking along 2nd Avenue and Hospital Place. Planning went out and did a site visit during the week at noontime, and looked at 2nd Avenue and Hospital Place, which is up on the screen there, and there was ample parking available. One resident did express concerns about illegal parking in the lane and blocking their driveway access, which they're actually experiencing now. Assuming the overflow parking is needed, it's reasonable to assume that visitors would look for legal parking, which, as I mentioned, is directly adjacent to the site, and also that the lane is not directly adjacent to the development, so there's no convenience perhaps for parking there illegally. as opposed to just parking on 2nd Avenue or Hospital Place. So we view that concern as really a bylaw enforcement issue. So in terms of what does planning recommend, given the alignment with the TP Town ARP and the architectural and environmental benefits of this development, planning recommends that the Canmore Planning Commission approve PL 2021-0332. Should the commission decide to approve the development, conditions of approval have been prepared by planning attached to your staff report for your consideration. And that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to take any questions the commission has.
Thanks, Nathan. Maybe I'll work down my my screen here to the other commission members here. I'll start with Florian.
Thank you for the presentation. I appreciate the quick analysis of available overflow parking too, and I agree with you. There's this project. There seems to be ample opportunity if the need arose. So thank you for doing that. I understand Mr. Gravel was involved in the TP Town ARP, the recent ARP. I don't know if it was a revised or new ARP. Just wondering if you can give us some background on the community's input that led towards encouragement of more contemporary styles of architecture in the neighborhood.
Sure. So as part of updating the ARP, we did well over a year of community engagement, including an online survey and also an open house. And through those engagement opportunities, we asked the question if the neighborhood was supportive of more contemporary design. That's something that we had been seeing from developers, an interest in from developers and in some of the projects as well, which had been receiving variances to grants. So we wanted to see where the neighborhood stood. The message to us was an overwhelming yes, that there was support for contemporary design in the neighborhood. And so we added it to the ARP as something that would be supported in this area and more strongly supported, I guess, than town-wide. Some of the town's architectural and urban design requirements are really focused on that, that mountain type of architecture, traditional mountain town architecture with the steep roof pitches and materials and so forth. So that was something through the ARP that we wanted to open the door a bit more to, given what we heard from the community.
Thank you. During the land use bylaw update in 2018, I understand the town did some public engagement there as well. And so I looked through that survey. There's some questions about architectural styles as well. And I think at that time, there's definitely a diversity of opinions that came out from the community, but there was, I think, some agreement in that public engagement that people feel that there's a lack of variety of architectural styles in the community in general. Like words that came up are generic and cookie cutter, things like that. Developers, people made comments that there's a couple developers just building the same fourplex for decades to save a tiny bit of money on design. In the light of that kind of public feedback, does the planning department have anything on the horizon with regards to updating community architectural design guidelines, or would that have to come from council? How does that work?
I can field that question.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mr. Gravel. Through you, Mr. Chair, we do recognize that our architectural guidelines are probably due for a refresh, but that will only be advanced based on the capacity of the department. So at this time, it is not a priority matter. There are some other items that we have been directed by council to look at first, but it is something that we continually are mindful of, and when the capacity is available, we will advance those changes. But it will be a significant conversation community-wise, because it could mean a significant shift in the way that buildings look in the community. So it's probably a much deeper undertaking than some may perceive it to be, which is why the capacity part is a key consideration.
Great. Thank you very much. I appreciate that there are more pressing items facing our community at this time, but I definitely look forward to that process. Okay, thanks. That's all I got.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Florian. Moving down here, Larry, I see you're next to my list here.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just have a few comments and a few questions. I too looked at the design of the building and had some questions, but I think as you travel through Teepee Town, some of the new developments, the fourplexes are sort of adopting the same type of roof line as we see in this development. So I sort of was comfortable with that. Speaking on the variances, the minimum side width, I think that's understandable given the dimensions of the actual site. I do not see any issues with the lot coverage. I did have a question as to this height that we're going to. I assume that's within our 20% guidelines that we can do, would be my first question. And the second question, some of the other new developments, have they been granted the same variance for height in Teepee Town?
So to answer your first question, the height variance is, or the height of the building is 10.8 meters. The maximum height is 10 meters. And so 80 centimeters would be, well, 10% of 10 would be 1. So it's actually, it would be within the development officer's power if we were the development authority for this project to approve. In terms of other projects in Teepee Town, I don't know as if this would be ideal in other locations in Teepee Town, the height variance, because there would potentially be impacts on adjacent properties in terms of shadowing and views. So I do see that this project, the site and its location, ties nicely with those variances in that there's no, or the impacts are little to none on the adjacent properties. In terms of fairness, it's tough because we do have to look at the impacts as well. So I don't even know if you want to look at it from a fairness perspective, if you could anywhere else grant those types of variances, because they would potentially be impacting adjacent properties. And also, there's a real desire to see some more commercial development on 2nd Avenue as a mixed use street. And so allowing for some concessions to get that is another valuable trade-off, I guess, for those variances that other developments like a fourplex wouldn't be able to provide to as rationale for additional height.
So the height is acceptable because of it. It does not impede any of the views or affect the neighborhood. Is what
Exactly.
You're telling me, Nathan. Thank you.
Yeah.
That would conclude my questions, Mr. Chairman, and thank you.
Okay, thank you, Larry. Lisa, you're next on my board here going down.
Thank you. No, I think actually my questions were just answered there with Larry's, so I don't have further ones.
Great. Okay, thanks, Lisa. Moving on to Doug.
Again, Nathan did answer the question regarding the height, and that's the one question I had. I think all the variances otherwise fit quite well with the site. It's site specific and facing on the Bow Valley Trail, and there on 2nd Ave, I think it fits quite well into that. And as Florian has already raised the questions about the architectural design, and it is bold, but along Bow Valley Trail, it's probably going to fit in. So no other questions. My one thought, and it's not almost call it a concern, but I'll leave it as a thought. It's with the land use bylaw, and it's sort of outside of what we can do with this development, but we've had this question before and this issue, and it's the number of bedrooms. We've gotten mission creep in visitor accommodations. I believe, and I may be, correct me if I'm wrong, when the land use bylaw was developed, the visitor accommodation unit, I believe, was looked at as considering 2, maybe 3 bedroom. In the last year, we've seen it gone from 3 and now they're 4. And it's driving that issue, which some of the residents did raise, was parking. When you got 4 bedrooms, and we had this issue on the Bow Valley Trail one we did a couple of months ago, and the one on 10th Street. 4 bedrooms, that's more than one family coming in most cases. But it's something we may have to discuss later. It's not something for this development because it is within the land use bylaw, but I think it's something the planning may have to consider as a definition for what a visitor accommodation unit consists of. That's all I've got.
Great. Thank you, Larry. Moving on,
No, it's
Joanna.
Doug.
Or sorry, Doug. Sorry.
I know we're both.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Mr. Gravel, I just, the photo of the first photograph that you showed of the building, it had some arrows in the front off of 2nd Street. Are those pathways to the front doors of the visitor accommodation units? Go back. Go back.
Right there.
Yes, there. Though those the blue arrows.
Yes.
Those entranceways into the actual suites themselves.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thanks. That's what I thought. I just want to make sure. And then the plans that you've provided us, I know that in the briefing document, you speak of the neighbor who the developer is in direct conversations with of phase 2 planning. But right now we're just looking entirely at phase 1 on that particular lot, correct?
That's correct.
All right, excellent.
That's all that's being approved. Yeah.
All right. And then in your briefing document, you speak to the fact that the permitted use of personal service is not appealable, but the discretionary use of the visitor accommodation, the visitor accommodation is a discretionary use, which could potentially be appealed, but just the use itself, not the actual building. Is that correct?
That's correct. So the use itself is discretionary. So it's identified as potentially not appropriate in every location in the district.
Yeah.
There would be some discretion that would go into whether or not it's appropriate.
Yeah.
Unlike, say in a commercial district, retail is something that you would allow anywhere at any time, and there's really no, there's no process per se other than you're just applying for a change of use.
I wanted to tease apart what you were expanding on in the briefing note, just to be sure. Okay, those are all my questions. It's an interesting looking building, definitely. And I'm happy that it's that the developers chosen visitor accommodation over tourist home, quite frankly, because I believe there's enough tourist homes on 2nd Ave as it is. So, but I do believe that all the variances really speak to the uniqueness of the corner. In fact, I probably would say this is one of the most unique corners to try to develop on in all of Canmore. And when we were formulating the TP Town ARP rewrite, there was some discussion about what would happen to these sort of strangely shaped lots or strange corners. And we can see that somebody's had the imagination to be able to put something interesting and almost a flagship of a building on Bow Valley Trail. I agree that taste is all very subjective. So some people are going to like it and some people are not. It reminds me quite a bit actually of the shape of the Calgary Library, only the color is different, of the new library downtown. But yeah, you've answered all my questions, and that's just pretty much all I have to say with regards to the application itself. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Joanna. So I've got a few questions here. The first deals with, I guess, the discretionary use of this versus an approved use. if this were not a visitor accommodation, would it be considered a townhouse as an approved use?
If it was a residential building,
Yep.
Yeah, I would define it as a, I mean, if you didn't have any of the commercial, like the personal service, I would define it as a townhouse development. Yeah, I think that's sort of the form. I wouldn't call it an apartment because you don't have separate, units on separate floors, that sort of thing. They all have their own access from the street. So
yeah. Okay. That's the first. I was just, as I was rolling around in my head, what would you, if you were dealing with a non-discretionary use, how would you characterize that? So I landed on townhouse, and I was looking for looking for some guidance there. The second question I have, it deals with page 19 on the package that was sent out. If you could, can you pull that up?
sure. Yeah, just give me 1 minute here.
It's it's development plan 2.0.
Okay, I'm with you.
Okay, we can't see that there, but as we go down the sizes of each of the units, you go 101, 102, 103, 104, 106, and then we talk about the CRU. I think that 106 should be unit 105. I'm looking for confirmation there because 106 is showing at 164 meters square.
So 104, if you're looking for 104, it's actually above the CRU. So
Right.
you have 103, 105's here, and then you go up to 104, and then here's
Right.
106, 107.
Okay, so maybe look at page 17 of the site plan.
The site plan is what you want.
Yeah.
Okay, what am I looking for here?
Top right, the unit sizes.
Oh, just 1 second here.
This is DP 1.0.
Oh, I see what you're saying. It's not listed.
Right. I think the unit 106 that is defined there, it should actually be unit
Right.
105.
Yes.
Right, because unit 106, if it is
If it's a CRU.
yeah, it exceeds the limit for one parking spot.
Right. So we can have that. Yeah, there can be a condition added just to have that discrepancy corrected.
Awesome, great. The next question I has to do with the waste storage location. So there's a reference that all garbage is within the units. What does that mean? Is there a communal garbage bin for this development?
No, so the development will take advantage of the town system.
Yep.
And so it'd be just like if you're a resident, the waste and recycling would be taken down the street here to the waste and recycling bins. And so they pay a fee for that service monthly, and they also pay an initial levy as part of that.
So there's no need for a location for a waste storage bin for pickup?
No.
Okay, awesome. The next item is condition 25. So it speaks to a minimum floor elevation of that is required of 1310 for flood reason, for high groundwater level reasons. The proposed floor elevation for this development is 1309.6, and there's reference to discussion continuing with engineering as to what's the appropriate floor elevation.
Sure.
Should that revert to 1310 as currently required, that's an impact of a higher floor of 0.4 meters. Will that have an impact on the height variance that has been requested?
No. So
Okay.
no matter where they set the site, it's measured from the main floor of it.
Okay,
It's
great. So that 10.8 remains 10.8, even if the floor goes up 0.4.
Yeah.
Okay. And the last question I have deals with the comments that came from when the posting here. Do you know if the resident or those individuals that provided commentary would have been part of the TP Town Task Force?
That provided comments?
Yeah.
No, none of them were on the TP Town Task Force, at
And
least the most recent task force.
Okay, great. And the proximity of those residents that made comments to the development, do you know, do you have that?
I don't have it on the tip of my fingertips.
Okay.
Not all of them identified where in TP Town they lived, and a couple, one or two, well, one didn't identify at all if they were a member of TP Town.
Yeah. Okay. Great. And the last is not a question. I'm seeking clarification, but would you characterize the architectural design here as modern mountain or mountain modern, as opposed to mountain traditional?
I would just, yeah, I mean, it's tough because there's no real definition for modern per se, right? There's just elements of it. So I guess in my own opinion, yes, I would call this modern mountain, based on the rolling peaks here, and the inspiration for that came from the local mountain peaks. So there's elements included in it that are reflective of the mountain characteristics of Canmore. So I would say that it's, yeah.
Okay. And the final is just a commentary, seeking some guidance. So the town of Canmore has a climate action plan, which talks about reducing greenhouse gas emissions, which predominantly are coming from buildings, by 30% in 2030 below 2015 levels, and 80% below 2015 levels by 2050. Notwithstanding that the bylaws and the National Building Code don't require that. Is this building, are you aware if this building in any way takes it towards being achieving that target, consistent with the town's direction?
I don't know. I don't have any way to confirm that, other than I can speak to what their commitments through the land use bylaw are towards environmental sustainability. So they committed to doing between 1 to 10% better than NECB, which is really I guess, aside from preserving the existing trees, would be the two sort of environmental commitments here. The architect, I believe, is at the meeting here, and I'm sure she could speak more to the sustainability side of the development if you wanted to know more.
Yeah, that'd be helpful. Is it Ms. Brown or Mr. Harrison?
Hi, I can speak briefly to it. My name is Kevin Harrison. I'm principal at SA. I'm part of the applicant team. I think the greater sort of sustainability initiative starts with originally site orientation and how you address your building from a passive initiative, and so given the nature of its kind of north-south orientation, and these visitor accommodation units are actually 3 units. We start with the immediate kind of response where you can actually get prevailing winds through cross ventilation. We can obtain two sides of natural light, both mitigating the need for additional means of artificial lighting and mechanical ventilation. And so we're doing it starting by an initial kind of passive approach to site orientation. And so it starts with that. And then secondly, to build upon that, rather than kind of greenwashing a building, which can, you know, can perhaps just become this sort of what people dub as being sustainable. What we're actually looking at doing is creating more of a stronger envelope and occupant comfort condition through additional R value in the walls and the ceilings, and we've been working with the client in how we achieve that beyond code minimum, which is also associated to NECB and beyond, or up to 10% of NECB. And then and our client can speak to this a little bit more, but we're looking at actually using a geothermal heat system, heating cooling system for the building itself, so that again it becomes a much more efficient system in running the building. And I'm not sure if you'd like more additional information on that, but the client's happy to talk about it if need be.
Sure, I'm happy. I know that I know we've got a number of developments that are going in Canmore, both residential as well as some of the Spring Creek development uses geo exchange. So yeah, perhaps the client could just say a few words about what his thoughts and plans there are.
Hi, I'm Michelle Hoogveld. I'm with Hoogveld Homes, and I'm speaking on behalf of the landowner and ourselves who are working on this project together with Sturgis Architecture. We are planning to put in a geo exchange system. Here's a diagram for those who don't know, but obviously you're well versed in this. Essentially, what we're using is a natural heating and cooling of the Bow Valley Aquifer. There's no water that is removed from the aquifer itself. And essentially what we're using is emission-free pumps so that we're not adding to any emissions in the environment. And we're also using Nordic heat pumps, and those are a Canadian-made pump, and they're extremely energy efficient. Who we're working with is we're working with the same company and the consultants and specialists that Spring Creek are using in order to put this system in place in this building. So that is our goal here in this particular location. So the other thing that I should actually mention is that we are similar to the last building that Frank Kernick is doing. We'll be adding solar ready preparedness for this building so that solar panels can be something that we can be looking at adding in the future. In addition, there will be electrical vehicle charging stations within each garage in the building for each of the unit owners. So
awesome. Awesome, Michelle. Thank you for that. You ticked all my boxes that I had there. So there you go. Great. So I haven't covered off the variances. I do think that variances are all appropriate for this site. So I'm prepared to make a motion to, and I hope my commission members here are supportive of this. Make a motion to approve this development as presented, with the conditions as presented, with the exception of a change there to identify the switch from unit 105 and 106 on I think that's page 19 of the page 19. It's either 17 or 19 of the package that came out. So all those in favor? Hands up. That looks unanimous. So thank you. So thanks staff for going through that. This my take is I think this is very is appropriate for the location, and will enhance that that really tricky wedge-shaped corner there. So, any other comments, questions from Commissioner Florian?
Yeah, I just thought I'd add some comments, maybe echoing what's already been said, but for one thing, we touched on the geothermal, and I think it's really encouraging to see that that technology is becoming more widespread. And there must be economic reasons that make it interesting for the developer to do that. And so I'm glad that we're at a point where those kind of technologies are being used and are more prevalent. The other thing, basically, just to summarize what many of us have already said on this commission about the project, is that it's a very unique lot, a very unique property. And I think that if there ever was a lot in Canmore that deserved a unique design, this would be the one. It's such a prominent location on Bow Valley Trail, and it's also on the boundary between the residential district of Teepee Town and then the more institutional part with the hospital, institutional commercial. So you're right on that boundary line. What a building wants to do there is sort of mediate between those two scales and uses. And I think this building does a very good job of that. If you look at just one block to, I think it's the northeast, there's the Lutheran church there, is on a very similar lot, triangular shaped. And so the church it's not a background building, it's sort of a monument building, where it's sort of mediating between the residential use and then the institutional. So that's that step in scale. And so I'd like to commend the developer and the architects on this project, because I think this is a very exciting looking building, and I think they really capitalized on the opportunities that this unique lot provided. I think that prow shape on the corner there is just so prominent. And I'm really excited to see this kind of architecture coming to Canmore. Yep. So just want to say thank you.
Okay, thanks, Florian. In the other planning business, we do have a sort of follow-up discussion here under separate meeting here at 3 o'clock. Any other planning business that we have to discuss? If not, the next scheduled meeting is January 26th. And do we have any preliminary indication, or we have agenda items there, Katie?
Not that I'm aware of at the moment.
Okay. So if nothing more, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn. It's almost 3 o'clock here. So move to adjourn this commission, this hearing. All those in favor? It kind of looks unanimous. Okay, thanks so much, and we'll see most of you here in about 6 minutes or so.
And for those we don't, happy holidays.
Yes, happy holidays to all as well.